il compositore Alexandre Desplat, Matt Damon, George Clooney, regista, coprotagonista Julianne Moore, sceneggiatore Grant Aswell.
Grant and I started looking at trying to make a film out of the Levittown, Pennsylvania story, and then I remembered the Coen brothers had written Suburbicon. And I thought it'd be kind of the perfect match to have looking the wrong direction while, you know, when you talk about making America great again, America great was, everyone assumed was the Eisenhower 50s, and of course it was great if you were, you know, white, straight male, but other than that it probably wasn't so great. And so it's fun to lift up that curtain and look underneath that thin veneer and see some of the real problems that this country has yet to completely come to terms with. And I thought that was a fun way to explore those same issues. Unfortunately, these are issues that are never out of vogue in our country. We're still trying to exercise these problems. You know. I will agree, first of all, that the insane Matt Damon is part of the fun with this. I've never seen him be so awful. You know, we looked at the idea of talking about these issues because these are issues that we consistently have to deal with. I grew up in the South in the 60s and 70s during the Civil Rights Movement, and we sort of at that time thought we were putting to bed a lot of issues. Segregation was going away. We thought we were putting these issues to bed. Of course we weren't, and we have these eruptions that blow up every few years, and we realize that we've still got a lot of work to do from our original sin of slavery and racism. The idea of juxtaposing these two was to say you're looking in the wrong direction if you're blaming this African-American family for all your woes. You know, I think that some of us up here on the panel are able to speak to the idea of men, white men, feeling that they're losing their privilege and blaming it on minorities, when of course it's nothing to do with that. So we at least have seen it growing up. Grant and I certainly are of an age that saw it. Probably Jules too, a little bit. I mean, she's too young. She's much younger. So I think that putting this insane family in the middle of this story, or putting this great piece of this great story about the Myers family and putting that inside this insane story is a better way of putting it. Seemed right. It feels right to have a movie where you're looking in the wrong direction on this, and that's why we did it.
I think Matt, perhaps, I'm here. Perhaps you can add something to the quality of this character, you know, which is sort of this meek man, and he harbors such folly.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with what George just said. I mean, it's kind of the definition of white privilege when you're riding around your neighborhood on a bicycle covered in blood, murdering people, and the African-American family's getting blamed for it. But look, you know, we couldn't have predicted, obviously, you know, when we were filming these race riots, that we would have something like Charlottesville, where, you know, we weren't literally thinking that, you know, race riots would erupt in America right before this came out. But it does speak to the fact that these issues have not and are not going away until there's an honest reckoning in our country. But in terms of playing it, it was very fun. I mean, you know, George said to me at the outset that you know, this is stuff you've never been able to do on, you know, so far in your career, and it was fun to play those scenes and take the leap with George.
I was interested in how one sister was so desirous of the other one's life. You know, in a sense, the character of Margaret really is very low status. She has no agency. She's not married. She doesn't own her own home. She has a job in a grocery store. And to her sister Rose has the perfect life. She has the life that she wants. She's the only kind of life that's going to give her any power or authority. And so that's kind of, so when you see her initially, and she's the one who says, go across the street and play with that little boy, you know, she's the one that notices what it is to be marginalized, because she's marginalized herself. But then pretty soon she's co-opted in this story and refuses to go outside of that because she's scared, and desperate. So that kind of complication, as well as the comedy and the bad guy part, was, you know, really interesting to me. And I think that George handled the tone beautifully.
It was also Julie's idea to have her dye her hair the same color as her sisters, which made it so creepy.
Yeah.
It was really creepy. Very smart. So by the time the movie comes out, whatever you were railing about usually has moved on. And films, like a lot of pieces of art, oftentimes, are really used to put a pin in a time and a place in history so that we can look back and see how we felt and where we were emotionally and sort of physically, where we were. That's when films work really well, I think. If you go to our country, depending on which side of the aisle you sit on, it's probably the angriest I've ever seen the country, and I lived through the Watergate period of time. There's a dark cloud hanging over our country right now. I'm an optimist. I think you could tell that actually by the end of the film. I actually do believe in the youth, and I do believe that we're going to get through all of these things, and I think that the institutions of the US government tend to work. We see them work with the press, and we see it work with the legislative and the judicial branches of the government. But people are angry, and a lot of us are angry. Angry at ourselves, angry at the way that the country is going, angry at the way the world is going. And this seems to reflect that, and I think that that's okay. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that's probably a fair thing to do. You know, the idea that it's, you know, we didn't want this to just be this polemic that is just a civics lesson. We wanted it to be funny. We wanted it to be mean, but it's certainly angry, and it got angrier as we were shooting. Yeah, in fact, there was an original draft of this called What Jack Saw, which was a completely different screenplay in the early 80s. Yeah, we really wanted always it to face through the eyes of the kid, because we didn't want to give him anywhere to go to tell anybody. We wanted him to feel uncomfortable about it. I think that that's, you know, by the end, you feel as if, when you see those two boys together, and they're throwing the baseball back and forth, you feel as if just being, you know, we didn't want to tie it over the, you know, we didn't want the kid getting adopted by anybody, you know, we felt as if the boys, these two boys have both been through the worst night of their lives, and they're gonna be okay. And that was what was important, was watching it through their eyes, understanding that I'm still very patriotic, I'm still very, I'm a positive person, I'm an optimistic person, and I do look at those young boys and how they see that world, and think that they look at it thinking, well, let's make this better. And that's the sense I got when we were working on the screenplay, and it's the sense we got when we, you know, it's an interesting moment, because we didn't write a scene that has the kids being adopted at the end, or the, you know, all the things you could do to say he's going to be okay. I literally went to Alexandre Desplat, the composer, and I said, listen, we haven't written anything here. We're going to leave these two boys playing baseball, and the only way we're going to know they're going to be okay is by the score of the music. And we need you to write, you know, a really beautiful piece of music for this that tells us that it's hopeful, that it's going to be all right. And he wrote this insanely beautiful piece of music. So it was the boys' point of view, but it was helped along by, you know, people like an amazing composer like Alexandre. I think they're very sweet people. You know, they just, it's a funny thing about monsters, because it's actually a good point, you know. The way monsters are formed is not that they just twist their mustache and they're bad people. You're formed, and you're informed, and it happens through a series of really stupid mistakes and compounding them. These are two characters who make a plan not particularly well thought out, and not, you know, the best of plans, obviously, but they compound at every single fork in the road that they could make a choice. They make the wrong one. Every single opportunity they get. They are monsters, some of it out of, it's not stupidity, but it's that they don't really know how, you know, they hire killers because they're not killers. And then they have to become killers along the way. They're not, they bumble into some really terrible things, and they become monsters. By the end, when Matt sits with his son, that's not who he was when he started the movie. He became a monster along the way. The fact that Julianne is trying to poison him beforehand, wasn't really who she started out as. She just wanted to have the happy life and happy family. So monsters are created, and they create themselves in this film, I think. That's right.
Monsters are created in the choices that we make, and I think I think when you have the opportunity to play a complicated character and someone who might even appear to be affable or idyllic or something, and then you realize that each choice they make is the wrong one, and it's possible for all of us to make the wrong choice. So it's like, how are you thoughtful in your life? How do you go through like making a moral choice, making an ethical choice?
I was curious to know if and why this icon of a suburb, you kept it for many years, as if you knew that Trump was coming, or was it just a coincidence?
Well, we didn't know that Trump was coming. That was a surprise for a lot of people. No, you know, the reality is that these are elements that have always played underneath, you know, in Americana. You know, the suburbs are a big part of our lives. It was a big part after World War II. This was a way for the new middle class to have a home. You know, for $6,000 you could have a home and a yard and a swimming pool and a school, and everybody could get a little piece of...
If you were white.
If you were white, absolutely. But that's exactly the point, is we thought that everybody thought that was all right until you realized that that only certain people were allowed to play in that, or swim in that swimming pool. So this isn't a movie about Donald Trump. This is a movie about our coming to terms constantly with the idea that we have never addressed our issues with race fully. We've tried. You know, when you hear them read that petition where he says, you know, we favor integration, but only when these people educate themselves. That's the actual petition that was read in Levittown, Pennsylvania. We didn't write that, we found it. People didn't think they were bigots. They're saying, I'm not a bigot, they just don't educate themselves, and I don't want uneducated people here. It's that subtlety that is the part that we're still trying to cope with. And it is a big part of our history, and it will be a part of our history for a long period of time.
Why did you keep it for so long?
Oh, I didn't keep it for so long. I literally, we came up with the idea to make it 1957 and make it Levittown, and went back and pulled out the Suburbicon script, which took place in the 80s, and didn't have the African American family in it, and it just had these knuckleheads killing each other, and we put them together. So we weren't sitting on it. I mean, you know, the Coens just didn't get it made for a period of time, and I think probably after Fargo and Burn After Reading and films like that, I think they sort of exercised this kind of film and didn't really want to go back and do a film like this again. It's important, because this is something that's really festering right now in the United States, talking about the Confederate flag and the Jefferson Davis monuments. I grew up in Kentucky, and you know, they would come to my hometown and do reenactments, Civil War reenactments, and they'd go to the townspeople, and they gave us all, you got to pick if you wanted to be a Union or a Rebel soldier, and I was like, give me you want to be the Rebel, you know, it was fun. And you didn't really understand the history of the Confederate flag, and understand that that was a flag that was designed to carry into battle against the United States of America in favor of slavery, and they lost. Now, if you want to wear it on your t-shirt, or if you want to hang it off of your front lawn, have at it. Good luck with your neighbors. But to hang it on a public building where partially African-American taxpayers are paying for it, when it was a symbol of hate, that cannot stand. And we have to come to terms with those things. That's important.
Just as an aside, I went to a high school in Northern Virginia for 2 years called Jeb Stuart High School. Jeb Stuart was a Confederate general. When I was 15 and 16, you know, none of us in that school thought anything of it. It was just the name of the school, and we lived in Virginia, and that's how it was in Northern Virginia. Now I'm part of a coalition to change the name of that school. The Fairfax County School Board, I think, is voting on it next week. So there's been a group of people who went to that school who feel now as adults, we're like, we need to change this. Like I said, the children can't change it, but we can change it by insisting. So the fact that we take these actions means that our children will live in a better place.
When it came around to doing the film again, I thought of Oscar for this, because I don't know if you've seen like Ex Machina or anything this young actor has done. He's the real deal. I mean, he's he's an actor of real substance and somebody that I just adore watching. And the thought that he was going to come in and, you know, you need somebody, the film is at that point where it needs a shot of energy into it and to take the film on a new direction. And he comes in and the two of you guys just knock that scene out, just knock it out of the park.
You know, and that Oscar could come in and lay it down in such an affable, entertaining way and drag us down with him. I mean, it was great to have an actor that powerful and that delightful and that funny to work with. And yeah, it was a great couple of days.
Buongiorno, Giuseppe Fantasia per Huffington Post. Per il signor Clooney volevo avere una curiosità. Lei da come parla sia dal punto di vista sociale e politico del suo paese, sembrerebbe che si stia preparando per diventare il prossimo presidente. Le piacerebbe? E poi porterebbe con sé Matt Damon e gli amici come Brad Pitt? Anche perché con Trump basta, o no? Grazie.
Would I like to be the next president? Oh, that sounds like fun.
Can I just say I'd like anybody to be the next president of the United States right away, please.